Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka, and a historic day went down yesterday with the WhiteHouse Crypto Summit. I'm going to have a full summary for you guys. Also, we are going to go through the entire fact sheet of the presidential signing of the Bitcoin crypto reserve, and I'm going to give you the links so you can check it out yourself if you'd like. Also, never sell your Bitcoin, says Trump in the crypto summit. Also, crypto Trump declares end to war on crypto and vows to propel America to Bitcoin supremacy. If you're wondering why Bitcoin dropped following the US BTC reserve launch, we have Scott Melker to explain the Wolf of all streets. Additionally, Trader says President Trump's crypto reserve plan is massively bullish for Bitcoin and unveils a six-figure BTC target, as do I. And finally, Van Eck reveals budget-neutral ways for U.S. to expand its Bitcoin reserve. All this and so much more on today's show. Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka, and the WhiteHouse Crypto Summit was yesterday. We're going to go through a full summary. Also, on Friday, the President Trump signed the official Bitcoin reserve bill, and we're going to go through the entire thing. Now, before we jump into those, let's just get into some market watch and Bitcoin technical analysis quickly for today, and then we'll get into the full stories. It should be fun. We've got a very full show, so let's get right into it. Currently, the date right now. First of all, I missed yesterday. I had some personal matters to take care of, hospital-wise, etc., etc. So not get into it. Everything was well. We are at Saturday, March 8th, 2025, and yesterday was the Bitcoin first ever WhiteHouse Bitcoin Crypto Summit. So you would expect that the markets would have pumped through the moon, baby, but no. We're going to talk about why in a few moments, but first let's just finish up with some analysis. So Bitcoin is kind of running sideways after yesterday dropping, and everything kind of dropped except Ethereum, strangely, which is up a little bit. So Bitcoin's currently sideways at $86,000. Ethereum up 3.5% at 2220. Solana down 3.5%, $138. XRP down almost 3%, $2.36. Doge down 3.5% at 19 cents, along with Sui down 2.5%. And we are currently, Bitcoin's flipped to a gray. No gain in the 24 hours and no loss. Let's get into crypto bubbles fast. We have approximately 50-50 mix today for the gainers and the tankers. I'm not going to go through all of them. We need to save some time here today. And when we zoom out to the month, we have about a 80-20 mix in the negative, and zooming out even more to the monthly, again, about a 90-10 mix. And just for shits and giggles, let's flip out completely to the yearly, and we see about a 50-50 mix on the yearly. Some huge gainers, including XRP 280%, BGB 430%, Ohm 2000%, GT 300%, TEL 91%. And of course, on the flip side, there's a lot that are down. But, you know, there's nothing listed down 2,000%. I mean, this is an impossibility, right? 100%, and you're out of the game. Let's get into the market cap. Currently, Bitcoin has a market cap of $1.712 trillion, Ethereum $267 billion, XRP $136 billion, Solana $70 billion, Doge $29 billion, Cardano $29 billion, Tron $21 billion. The total market cap right now is at $2.8 trillion, with Bitcoin holding 61.15% of that, Ethereum 9.5%, XRP 4.88%, Binance Coin 3%, and all the others combined together 8.5%. The Crypto Greed and Fear Index shows us we are at a 28 in fear today. Yesterday was a 34 in fear, and last week was a 20 in extreme fear. And there's approximately 1,132 days left until the next Bitcoin halving 2028, with 163,080 blocks left to mine until that time. Going into our top assets by market cap, we have the usual suspect: gold at $19.5 trillion, Apple $3.5 trillion, Microsoft $2.9 trillion, Nvidia $2.7, Google $2.1, Amazon $2.1, silver $1.8 trillion, Bitcoin in the number 8 position $1.7 trillion, Saudi Aramco $1.694, and Facebook to wrap up the top 10 at $1.585 trillion. You can currently get 1,156 Satoshis for one fiat US dollar. And into the US debt clock, we as a nation owe 36 trillion, 571 billion, 356 just flipped, 356 million fiat US dollars, which equals to $107,000 even per US citizen, and that equals to $323,047 per US taxpayer. Next, since we've gone through our pleasantries, I'm going to first go through a summary of the crypto summit, and then we're going to go into the actual full bill that was signed, the executive order by Trump, and kind of read it word for word, cut for cut, because I don't know if anyone else is doing that, and I think it's important that we read the whole thing because, you know, people are jumping to these conclusions. Then we're going to go through and talk about the news articles that are in conjunction with this crypto news summit, and the pitfalls and the failures and the positive notes. And then we, as part of the reserve, the reason why Bitcoiners are down in this thing instead of pumping like mad is they're not going to be adding any further Bitcoin at this time. They're just going to be taking what they have and trying to find budget neutral ways of adding more Bitcoin. So Van Eck has some good ideas as to how to add this budget-friendly Bitcoin, and I wish people were reading this. If they read this, then I feel like Bitcoin would be pumping and not dumping right now, because this, make no mistake, folks, this Bitcoin reserve we've been waiting for a long time, and it is a very good thing for Bitcoin. So let's go through a summary of the crypto summit. On March 7th, 2025, President Trump hosted an inaugural White House crypto summit, signaling a significant shift in U.S. policy toward cryptocurrencies. The event underscored the administration's commitment to integrating digital assets into the nation's financial framework. The key announcements and initiatives. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Number one, President Trump signed an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This initiative mandates that the U.S. government retain Bitcoin assets acquired through criminal and civil forfeitures, aiming to bolster the nation's financial position without incurring additional taxpayer expenses. The Treasury and Commerce departments are tasked with developing budget-neutral strategies to augment this reserve. This is what I was saying, that key word they don't like, budget-neutral, and they don't like, I'm talking about the Bitcoiners now, don't like the fact that they didn't come out and say, we're going to be buying 100 million Bitcoins, $100 million worth of Bitcoin. Digital asset stockpile. Beyond Bitcoin, the administration introduced a digital asset stockpile to manage other seized cryptocurrencies, including Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and Ripple XRP. This move aligns with the broader goal of positioning the U.S. as a leader in the digital asset space. The industry engagement. The summit convened prominent figures from the cryptocurrency sector: Michael Saylor, Brian Armstrong, who is the co-founder and CEO of Coinbase, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, the founders of Gemini, David Bailey, an entrepreneur. These leaders engaged in discussions with top administration officials and lawmakers, focusing on strategies to solidify the U.S.'s position as the crypto capital of the world. Regulatory outlook. The administration's emphasized a balanced regulatory approach aiming to foster innovation while ensuring investor protection. David Sachs, appointed as the crypto czar, highlighted efforts to create clear guidelines that promote industry growth without compromising financial stability. Market reaction. The summit's announcements had a mixed impact on cryptocurrency markets. While initial reactions were positive, with some digital asset prices experiencing volatility, the long-term effects remain uncertain as stakeholders await further regulatory clarity. In summary, the White House Crypto Summit marked a pivotal moment in the U.S. financial policy, reflecting a proactive stance toward embracing and integrating cryptocurrencies into the national economy. All right, great. So those are the keynotes taken from the Crypto Summit. Now let's check out the actual fact sheet delivered from the signing of the Bitcoin Reserve. So this is right from the whitehouse.gov website. We're going to go through it, and I also have a link in the show notes for this if you want to check it out yourself. Fact sheet. President Donald Trump establishes the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and U.S. Digital Asset Stockpile on March 6, 2025. Creating a Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and Digital Asset Stockpile. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to establish a Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and Digital Asset Stockpile, positioning the United States as a leader among nations in government digital asset strategy. The order creates a strategic Bitcoin reserve that will treat Bitcoin as a reserve asset. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin owned by the Department of Treasury that was forfeited as part of criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceedings. Other agencies will evaluate their legal authority to transfer any Bitcoin owned by those agencies to the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. The United States will not sell Bitcoin deposited into this strategic reserve, which will be maintained as a store of reserve assets. The Secretaries of Treasury and Commerce are authorized to develop budget-neutral strategies for acquiring additional Bitcoin, provided those strategies impose no incremental costs to American taxpayers. All right, so let's just, as we go through this, let's quickly summarize. So, Bitcoin Reserve, it's going to be comprised of forfeited or criminal Bitcoins that were basically seized from scams, from scammers, and they get the Bitcoins back, or thieves, and they get the Bitcoin back and they keep it. Other agencies, not the Department of Treasury, but other agencies will have to evaluate their own Bitcoin that they have and find a way to transfer it to this Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Now, the last point, again, this is what the Bitcoiners didn't like. They are authorized to develop a budget-neutral strategy for acquiring additional Bitcoin. So, and it needs to impose no incremental cost on American taxpayers. So basically, they need to find another way to gain more Bitcoins other than buying them with tax money. So that's the summary of that section. It also established a U.S. digital asset stockpile consisting of digital assets other than Bitcoin owned by the Department of Treasury that was forfeited in criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceedings. So again, it's the exact same thing, except the other coins other than Bitcoin will go into a digital asset stockpile, not the Bitcoin strategic reserve. The government will not acquire additional assets for the USD digital asset stockpile beyond those obtained through forfeiture proceedings. So they're 100% won't be buying in any way these other shit coins. But they will be buying Bitcoin if they can come up with, and when they come up with, budget neutral strategies for getting more Bitcoin. The Secretary of the Treasury may determine strategies for responsible stewardship, including potential sales from the U.S. digital asset stockpile. Now, in my thought, if they were smart, they would sell and this might end up happening, right? Because this is one way to create a budget neutral strategy for Bitcoin reserve. And so if they seize some shit coins, they could transfer it into their Bitcoin reserve. Agencies must provide a full accounting of their digital assets holding to the Secretary of the Treasury and the President's Working Group on Digital Assets. This order ensures strategic approach to managing digital assets under U.S. control. So the first point there, they must provide a full accounting of their digital assets holding. So there hasn't actually been an audit of the U.S. government's total crypto assets until this time. So now they're mandated to do so. Addressing a crypto management gap. Bitcoin, the original cryptocurrency, is referred to as digital gold because of its scarcity and security, having never been hacked. With a fixed supply of 21 million coins, there is a strategic advantage to being among the first nation to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The United States currently holds a significant amount of Bitcoin, but has not maximized its strategic position as a unique store of value in the global financial system. Premature sales of Bitcoin have already cost U.S. taxpayers over $17 billion, which we covered the other day. Biden sold their 200,000 Bitcoin approximately for $450 million, and if he had just held on to them, they would currently be worth $17 billion. So they threw away $16.5 billion, not surprisingly, amongst other hundreds of billions that they threw away in the previous administration. The executive order begins to resolve the current disjoint handle of cryptocurrency seized through forfeiture by and scattered across various federal agencies. Currently, no clear policy exists for managing these assets, leading to a lack of accountability and inadequate exploration of options to centralize, secure, or maximize their value. So they're basically putting in now a guideline because there was no policies in before. So now they do have a guideline on how to deal with their cryptocurrencies. Taking affirmative steps to centralize ownership, control, and management of these assets within the federal government will ensure proper oversight, accurate tracking, and a cohesive approach to managing the government's cryptocurrency holdings. This move harnesses the power of digital assets for national prosperity rather than letting them languish in limbo. Right, so now they actually have a plan instead of just, them sitting there, and whoever wanted to, I'm sure, as long as they had the key, they could say, oh, you know what, this crypto, we seized it, I think we should take it out and use it for something, and they would take it out and basically lose it or steal it, right? Delivering on pledge to make America the crypto capital of the world. President Trump is fulfilling his promise to position America as the global leader in cryptocurrency. President Trump's promised to make the United States the crypto capital of the world, emphasizing the need to embrace digital assets to drive economic growth and technological leadership. In his first week in office, President Trump signed an executive order to promote United States leadership in digital assets such as cryptocurrency. President Trump has consistently advocated for a forward-thinking approach to crypto, stating, "I'm very positive and open-minded to cryptocurrency companies and all things related to this new and burgeoning industry. Our countries must be the leader in this field." President Trump promised to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and a digital asset stockpile. President Trump's appointed a crypto czar and is hosting the first ever crypto summit at the White House. Just a few of the many ways this administration is demonstrating its strong commitment to this digital asset. So there we have it. And again, you can go right to the link I have in the show notes, and you can get directly to this fact sheet. And you can even get to the executive order, which effectively is the same thing. I read the whole thing, and it's pretty much this, but a little more verbiage, so I wanted to keep it kind of short. It's a tiny bit longer, a little more detail, but effectively it's exactly the same thing as this fact sheet. So there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth, everything you need to know about the Bitcoin strategic reserve and U.S. digital asset stockpile, without any BS in the middle, without any summaries. This is exactly straight from the White House. All right. So this is good. Now, what did it mean for Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin down? So we're going to get into that momentarily. Let's get into some other points about the crypto White House summit yesterday, which I thought were pretty interesting, and it goes in line with what us Bitcoiners believe in. Never sell your Bitcoin, Trump says. Treasury delivers remarks at the White House Crypto Summit. President Donald Trump hosted the first White House Digital Summit on Friday with a handful of major crypto executives and relevant members of his administration. Trump repeated his promises from his Thursday executive order to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve and to never sell America's Bitcoin. From this day on, this is quote, "America will follow the rule that every Bitcoiner knows very well. Never sell your Bitcoin," he said during the opening live stream. That's a little phrase that they have. I don't know if that's right or not. Who the hell knows, right? But then he continued when I was watching, and he said, well, until now, it's worked. In addition, the order tasked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick with exploring ways to acquire additional Bitcoin that impose no new cost on taxpayers. Though it also established a digital asset stockpile for altcoins, the order does not prevent the government from sending them and will not involve additional purchases for the stockpile by sending them. That's what it says in the article. I think it means selling them. Bad editing on the Crypto Potato's behalf there. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the government would rescind all previous guidance related to the tax code and risk weightings with cryptocurrency and promote U.S. dollar stablecoins to keep the U.S. dollar dominant across the world. Crypto executives across the roundtable applauded the president for taking a welcoming approach to the digital asset industry rather than a hostile one. The U.S. should have its leadership continue in this new financial system, said Sergey Nazarov of Chainlink. "I'm overjoyed to see this. This is how the U.S. will continue its role in the global financial system." Others at the roundtable included Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, Gemini co-founder Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, and strategy founder and executive chairman Michael Saylor. The bulk of the meeting is not being aired publicly, but David Sachs stated that the roundtable was kept a small one to inspire meaningful conversations. Now, the stream was actually pretty short, and I must say I wasn't overwhelmed by, these guys who are supposed to be the experts. They said multiple times, hey, we have a lot of IQ, we have a lot of tech geniuses in this room. And I guess we all know by now that tech geniuses aren't necessarily the most speech friendly. So what I saw was just, a bunch of sucking up. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you. This is great. This is how we need to be going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty much everybody that spoke. I would have aired some for you guys, but pretty much it was just a suck-up session saying, this is great. Thank you for your vision. This should have happened a long time ago. I'm happy that finally, a government has come along and they want to actually go into the, next 100 years with digital assets and are embracing them. But what I would have liked to seen is anybody, for God's sakes, they're supposed to be the experts, should have come in there with a prepared statement talking about why the hell we even want Bitcoin. I've said it before, 95% of the people out there have no freaking idea what Bitcoin is. So it would have been nice if there was a decent statement out there talking about why it's important to create this Bitcoin reserve, and not just creating it and saying this is a good thing for America, right? You know what? I'm going to take it upon myself. On tomorrow's show, I think I'm going to go into the history of money and why Bitcoin is so important. I've taken some time and done this in a previous episode, but maybe I'll devote the whole episode to that tomorrow, or maybe I'll do it tonight since I missed yesterday's episode. Let's get into our next story, which also this whole day is going to be all related to the Bitcoin summit and the signing of the Bitcoin Treasury, and why wouldn't it be? So Trump declares an end to war on crypto and vows to propel America to Bitcoin supremacy. Trump brands the Bitcoin era as a crypto setback. President Trump vows to make America the Bitcoin leader, ending Operation Choke Point 2.0 and bolstering crypto strategies. President Trump reaffirmed his commitment to supporting cryptocurrency and making America the Bitcoin superpower at the first White House Crypto Summit on March 7th. Trump reaffirmed his pledge to reverse restrictive policies and position the U.S. as a global leader in digital assets. He stated that his executive order establishing a Bitcoin reserve and a digital asset stockpile fulfills the promises he made last year. He also lamented that fact that the government had sold considerable amounts of Bitcoin it once held, and said its administration would ensure the federal government can never sell Bitcoin again. Everybody knows, never sell your Bitcoin. Trump further stated that the Treasury is working on developing methods to accumulate more Bitcoin without impacting taxpayers. Trump also compared the crypto race to artificial intelligence, emphasizing the need for American leadership. It's important we stay in front of this one. We should be in the lead just like we are in AI. Ending the war on crypto. Trump criticized the Biden administration for waging what he called war on crypto and announced the formal end to Operation Checkpoint 2.0, a policy seen as restricting financial services for crypto firms. He blasted regulators and Biden, stating that people really suffered under their restrictive and harmful policies, and criticized them for only easing their stance when election season approached. Yeah, I mean, for shame, right? Like, no to Bitcoin. And then once they saw that, oh, I'm losing votes because of this, then they started saying, no, I'm crypto friendly. Yeah, I believe in crypto. Right? More shams, guys. Those are the Dems for you. He said, in the end, they came around, but only for votes. Yeah, what I just said. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Melker, who is now in charge of managing the Bitcoin reserve, also criticized Biden's approach on the industry. He said, Biden did nothing but punish tech innovators in the U.S. Melker added that the crypto administration is working with the IRS to rescind previous guidance that has stifled the industry and working with lawmakers to develop a comprehensive regulatory framework for crypto and stablecoins. He also stated that the U.S. intends to use stablecoins to ensure the U.S. dollar maintains its dominance as the world reserve currency. Right. So, I think that's something else. Bitcoiners didn't like how, they keep talking about keeping the U.S. as the world currency. And can you blame them, right? What are they going to say? U.S. dollar sucks. The feds are criminals, and they've been pulling a sham over our eyes for 100 years. I mean, can they really say that? We all know these are the facts. I'm sure Trump knows these are the facts, but can they really go out and say that without losing confidence in the U.S. dollar and losing control over all the world's trade? Of course they can't. So they need to make baby steps toward a end goal, which will still keep the petrol U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. So trade is still continued in U.S. dollars because they need this, because if the world needs to keep buying U.S. dollars because trade is done in U.S. dollars, specifically oil. Like, in order to do trade in oil, they have to use the U.S. dollar, and it's been like that since I think it was 1971. When they took the dollar off the gold standard and instead put it as a petrol dollar. So they're doing what they can. Bitcoiners shouldn't be upset about this. They should be embracing this and excited that, they said they were going to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and they're doing it. Again, you would expect that the markets would pump. Personally, I feel like it's a buy the dip opportunity, and we should see a huge pump coming up soon. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. Now, we wonder why Bitcoin dropped following the U.S. Bitcoin reserve launch. So the Wolf of All Streets host Scott Melker explains. On March 7th, crypto investor and Wolf of All Street, Scott Melker, dedicated a huge part of his Wolf Den newsletter to the meaning of Bitcoin reserve launch and the public reaction to it. Later that day, he added several statements via his X account explaining the importance of this historic event. The U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve creation. Donald Trump promised the launch of a Bitcoin stockpile during his speech in the summer of 2024 in Nashville Bitcoin Conference, which we covered. Around the same time, Senator Cynthia Ammous introduced a Bitcoin reserve bill, which suggested that the U.S. should acquire 1 million Bitcoins over 5 years. Expectations were high. CryptoX was full of posts with hopes that Trump would sign the Bitcoin reserve creation order right after the inauguration. The reality turned out to be less thrilling, as Trump didn't even mention crypto in his inauguration speech. However, he pardons Ross Ulbricht of Silk Road, which he promised to do. The Bitcoin reserve plans were confirmed later, and Senator Ammous joined the Senate Banking Subcommittee on Digital Assets as a chair. On March 6th, the executive order to establish a Bitcoin reserve was signed. 2 months after the inauguration. How fast do you think these things happen, guys? It's easy to pardon somebody. You just say they're pardoned, get them out of jail. But it's not that easy to create an actual reserve. So it seems to me this was actually pretty expedient work. 2 months. If it was the Democrats, it would have been 2 years before. Even if they promised it, it would have been years before they could figure it out. So 2 months is not bad. On March 6th, the executive order to establish Bitcoin reserve was signed. The reserve turned out to be different from the one Ammous proposed. Its spirit is much closer to the initial Trump vision of a stockpile made up of seized Bitcoins that government will not sell. The reserve will be growing via seizures and forfeitures, so that will not use the taxpayers' money. More on that in a couple of minutes. I've got ways for them to accumulate the biddy and not use taxpayers' money. More on that. The reserve can be increased using other avenues not associated with taxes. Right. Currently, the U.S. is holding around 200,000 Bitcoin And I just have to add that a lot of those are still not actually owned by them, and they have to give them back. I think about 80 or 90,000 of those Bitcoin they have to give back to the, I think it's part of the Mount Gox, scam or something, and they've got to give it back to the actual exchange so they can redivvy it to the actual buyers of those Bitcoin. The accurate amount is not clear yet, so the government is conducting an audit. The digital asset stockpile was created on the same date. This one will include other cryptocurrencies, namely Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, and XRP. Some allege there is a possibility for a conflict of interest, as WhiteHouse crypto czar David Sachs may indirectly profit from creating the reserve of those cryptocurrencies. Sachs denies these accusations. He's already said he's sold all his crypto, but he owns other companies which indirectly own Bitcoin or these other Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, XRP. Following the creation of Bitcoin Reserve, the BTC dropped by $5,000, while the creation of the strategic Bitcoin Reserve has always been perceived as a trigger that will let the bulls out. Scott Melker explained why the price dropped and why the move was a great despite the criticisms. Now, I also want to say that also yesterday, the non-farm payroll came out, and as I predicted, the numbers were shit, and the US did not make as many jobs as they were anticipating, and I could have told you that. So now with that, this is actually good news for Bitcoin. So another reason why Bitcoin should be pumping. So with that, the Feds are going to have to drop rates because less people have jobs. So these are all bullish tenants for the biddy, let me tell you. So let's continue on with the story here. The price drop explained. Scott Melker decisively associates the price drop with the disappointment from those who were expecting that the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve launch would be followed by a buying Bitcoin in large amounts. Exactly what I've said. They were expecting that they were going to say, we're going to now buy $100 billion worth of Bitcoin. Well, it didn't happen, right? And here's his tweet. The reaction to the strategic Bitcoin reserve makes one thing clear. Most people who claim to be in Bitcoin for the fundamentals really just care about the number going up. The U.S. locking up Bitcoin as a store of value is massive long-term validation, but not because it's an instant. Let's go through the story and not go over to his tweet. Melker starts his message in the newsletter, "We did it," calling recognition Bitcoin as a strategic asset is America's biggest move yet in the Bitcoin game. Yeah, and I would call it probably the third biggest thing that's happened to Bitcoin. Number one, the Genesis block, the actual creation. Number two, the ETF creation, and that might even be number three, and this might be number two. And then, it's a mix-up. And this being number three, being the strategic Bitcoin reserve for the U.S. From the start, Melker states that the other countries will have to follow suit in Bitcoin race. He stresses that the U.S. will barely tolerate being second after China in terms of BTC reserves. As of now, the U.S. reserve may be less than Chinese one. It is set the stage for a global Bitcoin race that will move the price up in the long term. Absolutely. Further, Melker explains the difference between digital asset stockpile and the Bitcoin strategic reserve indicates that the U.S. explicitly considers Bitcoin the only cryptocurrency fitting the criteria of a strategic asset worth finding potential acquisition avenues. 100%. The other ones, they're just going to basically seize them from the thieves, and they're not going to buy anymore, and they're not even looking to buy anymore in any such way, whether it's, at least with the Bitcoin, they're trying to find tax-friendly or taxpayer-friendly ways of getting more crypto or more BTC. While some critics argue this doesn't immediately impact the market because the government isn't actually actively buying Bitcoin yet, they're missing the long-term significance. The US just signaled that Bitcoin is here to stay and a key financial asset, and history tells us that when America sets the standard, the rest of the world follows. As for the price drop, Melker throws in another factor, saying that when the big news drops into a illiquid market, leverage flushes out weak hands. Then the bigger investors show up, moving the price up. And that's what's actually happened next. The Wolf of Wall Street's host continues by saying that the global demand for Bitcoin, stimulated by the SBR launch, Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, will increase the upward pressure in the long run. Other reactions. There were angry voices across the internet after the details of the BTC reserve were revealed. Many people were disappointed with the decision not to spend tax money but to buy more Bitcoin. Some don't even see much difference between U.S. Marshals holding seized Bitcoin and the U.S. Treasury holding the same coins in a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Understandingly, Scott Melker confronted this point of view as it ignores what is written in the order, which doesn't deny the future budget neutral BTC acquisitions. And I've been saying that now for 3 episodes. That's the key there, right? They're saying, yes, we can and will buy more in a budget neutral acquisition. Jeff Park of Bitwise Invest dismissed the executive order, saying there was nothing strategic about it. Park said the entire Strategic Bitcoin Reserve story turned out to be a major pump and dump chapter, and he's happy it's over. Many Bitcoin bulls praised the move, expressing little to no disappointment, calling the executive order historical. For instance, Senator Lummis voiced her full support for the move, despite her project being rejected. The only concern she raised was the lack of congressional support for the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. A prominent Bitcoin supporter using the moniker Bitcoin Therapist called the order the most bullish news he has seen in the past 4 years. Anyway, the U.S. crossed the Rubicon. We'll see what happens next. Right. So, it seems to me that this is good news, guys, and people are just taking it the wrong way, or the institutional investors, we're going to find out, in the next coming weeks what they think of it, because the internet community seems to, they use it as a pump and dump opportunity. But it is definitely a good thing. And it is very bullish for Bitcoin. And the traders say that President Trump's crypto reserve plan is massively bullish for Bitcoin. And they unveil a 6-figure BTC price target. A widely followed crypto analyst is updating his outlook on Bitcoin after President Donald Trump announced the creation of a federal crypto strategic reserve earlier this week. In a new strategy session, pseudonymous crypto trader Calio tells his 692,000 followers on X that unveiling the strategic Bitcoin reserve is the most bullish announcement he's heard in the history of the crypto king. See, I'm more along the lines of that. I agree with that. Bitcoin has literally never had a more bullish announcement, and some people are selling here. It's a laughing fact, isn't it? According to Calio, those panic selling the news are making a huge mistake, as he predicts the top crypto asset by market cap will once again hit a 6-figure price tag in a few days. So, yeah. I said it before on this broadcast, and I will keep saying it, buy the dip. You'd think Trump just signed a bill banning Bitcoin the way everyone is panic selling. The most powerful government in the world just announced they're establishing a Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. The largest holder of Bitcoin in the world just announced they aren't selling. Be more bullish. And, they've got it in large caps here. as if to yell this to the world, and I feel like we need to be yelling this to the world. The traders chart appears to indicate that BTC will hit over $100,000 sometimes in the middle of March and over 130K in May. Earlier this week, Trump confirmed the U.S. will create a strategic Bitcoin reserve that will include Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano, causing the market to spike. The flagship digital asset is trading for $86,891 at the time of writing, a 2.5% decrease during the last 24 hours. Yeah, so bit of insanity going on, guys, and I would say it's really time to buy the dip. And so going into why this is positive, 100% it's positive because the U.S. just said we are never selling our Bitcoin. Trump just said never sell your Bitcoin to the consumers, right? They're looking on budget-neutral ways to buy more Bitcoin. They can't. They're stuck. They can't just tell the U.S. taxpayer who has no idea what a Bitcoin is or what it's even for. They just think it's some sham. They know nothing about it. And based on the ignorance of the 95% people out there, this would cause chaos. It would give CNN and CNBC and all these other idiotic legacy media folks another thing to complain about and lie to the U.S. people about. Now, they need to find budget-neutral ways to buy more Bitty. And Van Eck reveals budget-neutral ways for the U.S. to expand its Bitcoin reserve. And this came out, it didn't take much thinking for this guy to come out with ways. So, I mean, if he's doing it, certainly the biggest crypto brains in the world sitting at that table at the summit would have come out with some things, or at least read Van Eck's article and maybe made some suggestions based on this, right? Van Eck proposes strategies for a U.S. Bitcoin reserve, including gold revaluation, Bitcoin bonds, and asset sales without taxpayer costs. Exactly. Van Eck has outlined several potential budget-neutral strategies that could enable the United States to expand its Bitcoin reserve without using taxpayer funds, as they want. The analyst, chaired by Matthew Siegel, explores financial mechanisms that leverage existing assets, modify regulatory policies, and introduce new debt instruments. Van Eck suggests gold revaluation and bonds to boost U.S. Bitcoin reserve. After President Trump's executive order to create strategic Bitcoin reserve, Matthew Siegel shared insights on X. He outlined ways the U.S. government could expand its Bitcoin holding without impacting the federal budget. One key strategy involves revaluing gold reserves, which would require congressional approval but could generate substantial financial resources. By adjusting the official valuation of gold, the government could unlock additional capital to acquire more Bitcoin. Another option involves issuing Bitcoin-backed bonds. Under this plan, the U.S. Treasury could sell bonds priced above face value and allocate a portion of the proceeds toward purchasing Bitcoin. This approach would not impose new taxpayer costs, as Bitcoin would serve as collateral. The Treasury could repay bondholders with either Bitcoin or U.S. dollars upon maturity. This method could appeal to institutional investors while incorporating Bitcoin into government debt instruments. Meanwhile, the OCC has cleared the way for federal banks to engage in cryptocurrency activities, including stablecoin transaction and custody services. The new guidance also allows banks to participate in DeFi activities like node validation without requiring prior licensing. This move signals a significant shift in crypto regulation under the Trump administration. Yeah, so they could basically effectively mine Bitcoin, right? When you're validating transactions, that's effectively what you're doing. And then they could use that those fees being charged to buy more Bitcoin. Utilizing the Federal Reserve and IMF for expansion. Van Eck also suggested modifying the Federal Reserve surplus policies to facilitate Bitcoin acquisitions. Before 2015, the Federal Reserve maintained larger surplus funds, but legislative changes limited these reserves. By adjusting surplus regulations, the Fed could allocate excess funds toward expanding the Bitcoin reserve. However, such a move would require congressional approval. Another proposal involves lobbying the International Monetary Fund to include Bitcoin in special drawing rights. Special drawing rights are international reserve assets used to supplement official reserves of IMF member countries. If Bitcoin were added to the system, it could further cement its role as a global financial asset. While this approach may not require direct congressional approval, it would necessitate diplomatic negotiations and policy shifts within the IMF. Selling government assets to support reserve growth. Beyond traditional financial strategies, Van Eck proposed selling surplus government assets as a way to fund Bitcoin purchases. One unconventional suggestion is the sale of 1.4 billion pounds of government stored cheese, estimated to be worth between $2 billion and $4 billion. Wow. Although the cheese stockpile is privately held, the USDA has the authority to sell excess dairy products without congressional approval. This approach could provide a direct funding source for Bitcoin purchases without affecting the federal budget. Additionally, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, a self-funded government entity, could be another mechanism for acquiring Bitcoin. The ESF has been used in the past to manage foreign exchange reserves and stabilize currency markets. Since it operates outside congressional appropriations, it could expand Bitcoin holding without requiring new legislation. Bitcoin reserve expansion likely to face policy challenges. While Van Eck has presented multiple budget-neutral options, many of these strategies would require policy adjustments and regulatory approvals. Some proposals, such as gold revaluation and Federal Reserve surplus modifications, would need congressional approval. The U.S. government's approach to Bitcoin continues to evolve, with the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve marking a major step toward integrating digital assets. More so, crypto czar David Sachs recently revealed that the U.S. government lost over $17 billion by selling nearly 195,000 Bitcoin over the past decade. He criticized previous administrations for lacking the long-term Bitcoin strategy, arguing that holding the assets could have significantly benefited taxpayers. Additionally, Donald Trump highlighted the importance of stablecoin legislation during the crypto summit, aiming to establish clear regulations before Congress' summer recess. He emphasized that regulatory clarity would drive innovation and growth in the financial sector. So there we have it. A mouthful and a whole bunch of different ways to acquire more Bitcoin without using taxpayers' dollars and using a budget-friendly approach. Hopefully you guys found this informative and helpful. If you did, please subscribe to this channel. I will be getting to 500 to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I would love it if you guys help me go along this ride and join the ride with me. And please remember, folks, there are approximately $900 trillion worth of assets in the world, so money is abundant and money is everywhere. It's time that's scarce, so spend your time wisely. Spend less money than you earn. Don't pay interest to the banks as much as possible. If you suddenly start making more money, start saving more money. Don't start spending more money. And start saving when you're young. If you can start saving in your early 20s or teens, you should be able to retire when you're 40 or 45. If you have a great idea, don't wait for tomorrow. Start today, even if you're not ready, and things will slowly come together for you. Again, if you found this stream enjoyable, please share, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next stream, folks. Thanks so much for joining.